When the House was suspended, we are order number 1. To that we shall return. Order number 1. Member for St. Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Deputy Speaker.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise this evening to support the presentation yesterday by the Prime Minister, the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast. And I rise to support that presentation for a simple reason. We faced a very difficult situation on assuming office. And we as a party and as a government have decided that the course of action as laid out by the Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance yesterday, is the course of action that will take us from where we are now, the course of action that will stop the hemorrhaging, the bleeding, and that will allow us to get back to a place where our people can hope again, where our people can participate in rebuilding Barbados. But before I get into the specifics of what I want to commend about the presentation and about the areas that fall under my remit, I would want, with your pleasure, Mr. Speaker, to thank the great people of St. Peter for the tremendous confidence that they have reposed in me, in sending me to this place to represent their interests. I've said on the campaign trail over the past few months that even though I stand at 6 foot 6 inches, I am really but a dwarf standing on the shoulders of some great persons who have gone before me in this honorable chamber. And I refer to J.T.C. Ramsey. He was a carpenter, the first tradesman to sit in the Honourable, the House of Assembly. Sir Kenmore Husbands, the first black speaker from St. Peter. I refer to Sir Frank Walcott, the Right Excellent from St. Peter. I refer to the former speaker, Mr. Burton Hines from St. Peter. I refer to the Right Honourable former member, former Prime Minister, Owen Seymour Arthur. And so I am acknowledging that I come here to this place riding on the shoulders of those who have gone before me. I want at this point, even as I commend the people of St. Peter, to recognize my campaign, my election agent, Mr. Randy Hall, who nominated me on nomination day, who was my agent on election day, and who passed away last week. He was a stalwart of the Barbados Labour Party, and I am of the view that his life was extended, that he willed himself to live as long as he lived because he wanted to see me in this place. And I will be eternally grateful to him. And I say to the people of St. Peter, I will be faithful not just to the 4,632 persons who voted for me, but to the entire constituency of St. Peter. I also wish, through you, Mr. Speaker, to thank the Prime Minister, the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast, for inviting me to join her cabinet and assigning me the responsibility for labour and social partnership relations. She has done that at a very challenging time in the life of this country, but I believe that, like all of my other colleagues, we will rise to the challenge. I also want to thank those hard workers in my ministry, the Permanent Secretary and her team. They have made me feel very welcome in the Ministry of Labour and Social Partnership Relations. Mr. Speaker, Barbados and Barbadians have long understood that the way we solve problems, the way we deal with difficult situations, is to come together, to collaborate. We work together. We are our brothers and our sisters' keeper, and we deal with the challenges that confront us from time to time. The leadership of the social partnership has met 5 times in the past 2 weeks. Almost 40 hours of face-to-face discussion. That is something that is maybe unprecedented in Barbados. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, to this chamber that it represents the seriousness with which this Barbados Labour Party government is treating to a very difficult situation that confronts the country. It also says to the country that this is how this Barbados Labour Party government will govern and will administer the affairs of state. We will work with our partners. We will engage so that we can be effective in facing and fixing our challenges. In our discussions, we have spoken to social justice, we have spoken to fairness, and all partners in this tripartite arrangement understand that social justice and that fairness will be the underlying philosophy of all of the measures that will have to be taken to get us out of where we are now to where we ought to be. All of us as partners understand that as we put our shoulders to the wheel, as we seek to fashion good policy to get us out of the situation, that the most vulnerable in our society will be protected. And that has been our guiding philosophy. And as the minister responsible for social partnership relations, I wish to join the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast in commending this social partnership. The partners have been honest, have been open, they have been mature, and they have shown tremendous commitment to solving the challenges faced by our country. I want to say to Barbadians, through you, Mr. Speaker, that the social partnership understands the situation, and the social partnership is determined to fix the problem. Before I go further, I want to say something about the pay increase that was agreed by the unions on behalf of the public servants of Barbados, the 5% pay increase. That pay increase for the period April 1st, 2018 to March 31st, 2019. Mr. Speaker, I've been involved in union negotiations for almost 2 decades. And 23% is not anything that is unusual. I was once faced across the table with a union that shall remain nameless. I have not received leave from you to call the name. And I was faced with a proposal for a 25% pay increase, along with increases in other benefits. Now, those involved in the movement understand that where you start is not where you expect to end. And that goes not just for workers and their representatives, that also goes for employers and business people. Where you begin is not where you expect to end. Trade unions have a method. And I'm saying to you, Mr. Speaker, that persons, especially those involved in the trade union movement, including a person who now sits in the other place, ought to know and really ought not to be uncharitable in accusing the unions of betraying the workers. Our trade union movement, and I really hope that that person who sits in the other place is not speaking for the member for St. Michael West, the leader of the opposition. I'd be very disappointed if he was. I would be very disappointed if he was. But the unions in Barbados came out of the belly of this Barbados Labour Party. The unions in Barbados are a mature organization. The unions in Barbados are led generally by people who understand. And it is, in my mind, to suggest that the unions have betrayed the workers is contemptuous. I think it is unkind at best, and if this is parliamentary, Mr. Deputy Speaker, wicked at worst, to suggest that the leaders of the labour movement have betrayed the workers. The leaders and the workers, because the workers are our constituents, the leaders and the workers in the trade union movement understand where Barbados is today. They understand that the way forward is not going to be easy initially. But like one of my colleagues said, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that was a member for Christchurch East Central. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and we expect this to be a 30 to 36 month exercise. I also want to say, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that as a government, we also recognize that the business sector understands that they too have a role to play. In our discussions in the partnership, we have been, and led by our Prime Minister, the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast, we have been very clear to say to the business community that the days of the burden of adjustment falling totally on the shoulders of workers are over. This Barbados Labour Party is a party of fairness, a party of social justice. And so, in as much as we understand that there is need for adjustment and there is need for some austerity, the burden will be shared, must be shared. And I want to commend the business community this evening for understanding and appreciating that they have to take some of the load. Nobody wants to take load, generally speaking, and they may not have done it willingly, but they understand the situation the country faces. And so they have agreed, like the workers have agreed, to take some of the burden that adjustment will bring as we seek to get Barbados out of the mess left by the last Democratic Labour Party government. Yesterday, the Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, spoke candidly to the country. She explained, and that was not the first time she did so, but she explained where we were and spoke to what was necessary to get us from where we were. None of us wants to remain in the situation that the country, not that the country has found itself, but that the country has been placed in by the last government. And so I want to join with her in suggesting to this Honourable House and to the people of Barbados that the budgetary presentation yesterday was a balanced one. I'm actually almost offended by the introduction into this chamber this morning of the term octopus. I think it was very unfortunate by somebody who should know better to introduce whether or not you stated that you believe that that was what was happening. Introducing the idea reinforced the view that may be held by a few in our society that the budget was designed to give and to take back. It was very unfortunate, and I believe that the Honourable Member who used the term really ought to apologize and withdraw it. But the budgetary presentation yesterday was balanced in that it sought to give to those persons who we understand to be the most vulnerable a platform upon which to go through a period of austerity. And so to give public servants a 5% increase was to recognize that their purchasing power, for them, their dollar had been devalued. their purchasing power over the last 8 years had diminished significantly. And as a party and a government that speaks to and holds as its hallmark the idea of fairness, we thought that the public workers of Barbados, who by and large go to work every day early to do the business of the country, deserved an increase. We could not give to the public servants what we believe was their full deserts because of the situation. And the public servants, to their credit, understand that and have accepted the agreement for 5%. We have given to pensioners an increase, non-contributory pensioners, as well as those at the lowest end of the contributory scale, because they too have suffered. Their purchasing power over the past many years has diminished significantly. We spoke to trust loans. We spoke to purchasing a few buses, a few garbage trucks. We talked about converting pit toilets to waterborne facilities. The Prime Minister also spoke to increasing the allocation to the Welfare Department. And Mr. Speaker, I mention these because these are not attempts to give to take back. These are measures designed to cushion the blow of austerity on those who are most vulnerable. They are also measures designed to help the country, even as business takes some of the burden, and especially tourism, which will be taking a significant portion of the burden, and visitors to the country as well. But for those who are going to be bearing significant burden, then there needs to be an understanding, especially among our visitors and our tourism industry, that the environment that they're going to be coming to and paying a few more dollars to enjoy is a commodious one. It is one that they can feel happy and comfortable in. That is how the budgetary presentation yesterday was constructed. And so when we talk about sharing the burden, we talk about the room tax, we talk about the departure tax. We also spoke to increasing the band, the income tax band, or the rate of tax on 75,000 accessible income and over. We talked about the tax on petrol, purchases done online from overseas. And, Mr. Speaker, those measures are designed to spread the burden of what is necessary to rescue Barbados, to spread that burden not on the workers of this country, but across all sectors of the country. And so when you have a tax on petrol, you are really saying to persons, we are taxing a commodity that you have leverage over. You can decide how much you're going to drive. It is not a flat tax across the board. When the tax is on accessible income over 75,000, you are saying to persons who are in the middle or upper middle class, we are not going to be burdening only those at the bottom, those whose water bills will go probably from $35 to $75 or $80. Those who earn in the higher brackets will also have to bear some of the burden. The reality is, the last government has left us in a very precarious situation. Barbadians understand that. And Barbadians, those who I speak to, some from St. Peter and some from other places, appreciate the fact that they do not have to bear the burden alone. They appreciate the fact that this Barbados Labour Party government has crafted a set of policies that puts the burden on not just them, but on the middle class, the upper middle class, and visitors to our country. They are appreciative, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Our manifesto is a people's manifesto. It is a manifesto crafted by interacting with people, because people, the citizens of Barbados, those who are resident here, and Barbadians who live abroad, wanted to see something different in terms of the governance of this country. They recognized that we were going in the wrong direction. As my colleague, the member for Christchurch East, says, everything seemed to have been getting lower and lower and lower. And they thought it was time to raise the country again, to lift it up. And they contributed their ideas that were included in the crafting of the budgetary presentation that we would have heard yesterday. The people of this country are looking to us, this government, to rescue the country, to rebuild the country, and to restore our fortunes. I want to give the assurance, Mr. Speaker, that we, as a government, will continue to engage the people of this country. We will continue to engage the social partnership. The member for St. Michael Northeast indicated that throughout this period of adjustment, we will be meeting with the social partnership twice every month. Because in order to get out from where we are, we have to do it together. The honourable member also spoke to the email address that has been set up, ideas for Barbados at barbados.gov.bb. And this portal has been designed to capture the ideas of Barbadians, because Barbadians want to help. They've been reaching out to us. They want to know how they can share their suggestions. And I want to say to this Honourable House, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the diaspora in particular wants to be involved. I have to apologize to the Honourable Member for St. Philip South. The member for the city and myself left the chamber during your speech. But that was because we had to take a call from some members of the diaspora in the US who want to help our healthcare system. Members of the diaspora want to help. They want to assist. They recognize that many hands make light work. And they believe that they have an obligation to their country, to the country of their birth. As a matter of fact, even though some of them have not lived here for 12 consecutive months or 12 consecutive years, they have been feeling the pain of Barbadians, even though vicariously. And because they have been feeling the pain through relatives, through friends, they want to contribute. And the email address that we give, that the Prime Minister gave yesterday, is just one initiative. There will be others building on the technology platforms. We'll be having Facebook, Instagram. We will be having, there's another email address where people who want to help will be able to share as well. There will be people's assemblies, and the member for Christchurch South will probably speak some more to that. Other initiatives to engage Barbados and Barbadians during this period of austerity and beyond will also include the creation of the Committee on Social Justice, which will be an extension of the social partnership to include what we refer to as the third sector. And that extension of the social partnership, that social justice committee, will include religious organizations, charities, among other organizations. Now, I've mentioned religious organizations and charities specifically because even though we have increased the vote, or we will increase when we pass the bill, increase the vote to the welfare department, we want to ensure that no vulnerable Barbadian falls through the cracks. And so even as we sit as a social partnership and craft policy, we also want to work with our extended partners to get them on board so that they, religious organizations and charities, work closely with us to ensure that Barbadians do not fall through the cracks. We have
Member
a responsibility.
has 5 minutes. 5 minutes more.
We have a responsibility, the shocking there, just so, Mr. Deputy Speaker, but we have a responsibility to the vulnerable in our society. And so even as we recognize the magnitude of the challenge that faces us, we also recognize that there are persons who will need to be looked after. Now, we spoke, the Prime Minister spoke yesterday about paying tuition fees for those at tertiary level, and she indicated that those students who benefit from not having to pay tuition fees at the point where education is delivered, and I never agree to using the term free education because education has never been free. But the society has taken the load off persons at the point of delivery of education. And those persons are going to be asked to contribute 100 hours of service to their country in return for what their country will be doing for them. And I want to say that this initiative is an initiative that has the potential to recreate in Barbadians a sense of living to help others, a sense of understanding that we are our brothers and our sisters' keeper, recreating in us a sense that we have, that our reason for being is to help others, those around us, those who may be not enjoying what we are enjoying. And as a person who's been involved in mentoring for a while, I welcome an initiative such as this one, an initiative that will allow young people to give back to their country, give back to their society. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we're in a difficult situation, but we have a mechanism to get us through. We have a mechanism to bring us back from the brink. Many years ago, I traveled as part of a Barbados delegation to Jamaica, to an ILO conference, and one of the items on the agenda was speaking about the social partnership. Our compatriots in the Caribbean were fascinated by this creature that was almost unique to Barbados at the time, an institution where we all came together to get us through tough situations. They wanted to hear from us, how did this creature work? We are known, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as a people who come together and band together to solve our issues. I want to give the commitment to this Honourable House that we will continue to do so. I also want to say to the people of Barbados, through you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that even as we feel the commitment of our partners in this process, I'm going to give the commitment to the ordinary people of Barbados that measures are going to be put in place to ensure that the reduction in prices from the removal of the NSRL are passed on to the consumers of Barbados. We understand that our partners in business are committed, but we've been elected by the people of Barbados. And I just want to give that assurance to the people of Barbados that we will, even though we feel the camaraderie, we will be looking out for their interests, and we will make sure that what needs to be done is done. We're in a tough situation, but we can do it. We can come back from the brink. We must do it. We have to. We have to do it for ourselves. We have to do it for our country. We have to do it for our children. We have to do it for those who will come after us. And so, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in light of where we are at, and in light of what needs to happen to get us from here to where we ought to be, I want, as I say, to support the measures, the budgetary proposals shared with this House, presented to this House by the Prime Minister, the Honourable Member for St. Michael North East. I want to commend them to this House. I want to commend them to all Barbadians. I am obliged to you.
Thank you. Member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this wonderful debate. Before I start, I must first commend all the members who've spoken before, and I was remarking to a colleague just before we came in that this day, over these next few days, we'll see more maiden speeches made by new members than ever before in the recent history of this Parliament. And I want to commend all of the new members for making a tremendous contribution, both those who have heard so far, and I expect the level of contribution will continue all through the next few days. So I want to thank them. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in all things, we must put God first. And I want to put God first with a verse from 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 57. And by the way, I only use the King James Version. I don't use any of these modern versions. I'm very much a Baptist person. I don't know what the Leader of the Opposition, which version he uses, but I am a King James Version person. And I studied the King James Version, and that is the version that I use. But thanks be to God, which giveth us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. And that, I think, is most important. Because at the end of the day, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if God did not give us the strength, if God did not give us the intelligence, and if God did not give us the opportunity, we would not have had the victory that we've experienced. So I want to put God first and thank Him for what He did, not only for us here in this august chamber, but for the people of Barbados. Because the people of Barbados needed a change, and we needed to change that administration and bring a new, fresh direction for the people of Barbados. And it is clear to me and everybody that with a victory like the one we experienced, that the people of Barbados have spoken very clearly, and we have to respect what they have said and remember it every single day in whatever we do. I want to thank, Mr. Speaker, of course, my surviving parent and my wife for having the tenacity and the confidence in me to support me coming back to this august chamber. As I was remarking to another colleague, I sat first in the back bench, 2003 to 2008. Then in 2008 to 2013, I sat on the opposition benches. Indeed, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sometimes I sat in the chair next to you, to your left. And now for the first time, I will be sitting on the front bench of the government. So I have sat all over this chamber. And I like all of the seats that I have been able to occupy. And because all helped to make me the person that I am today. Experiencing life on the backbench was instructive. And by the way, I sat next to the Leader of the Opposition for 5 years. And it was instructive, not only to sit next to him and to hear his way of thinking and understanding how he saw government, but also he encouraged me to get involved in the ministry as well. And I thank him for that. And I will be forever thankful to him for encouraging me to take that step and in terms of my theological education. But of course, none of us would be here without our constituents. And I want to thank, now I'm not speaking to wider Barbados, I want to speak to the constituents of Christchurch West. I want to speak to the people of Sergeant's Village, to the people of Fours Road, people of Bonnets, to the people of Dells Road, St. Matthias, Harts Gap, Blue Waters, Navy Gardens, and Worthing View. To all of you who came out and supported not only my candidacy, but supported the Barbados Labour Party with resounding numbers. And I want to make this document, Mr. Deputy Speaker, a document of the House. Because just like how the Barbados Labour Party's manifesto is a social contract with the people of Barbados, this manifesto for Christchurch West is a social document between Dr. William Duguid and the people of Christchurch West. And I intend, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to be able to implement all of the measures that I promised, that I put in this document for the people of Christchurch West. And I want the people of Christchurch West to know, and hear me carefully, we have already started. One of the first things that we've wanted to do is to be able to repair the bathrooms and to provide a new hall for the people at the students at Arthur Smith, which is the only school in Christchurch West. And with the permission of the Minister of Education, we've already put together a design for putting a new hall in place. And it is not using government funds. This is using funds that the community itself will be raising to be able to support and improve the school at Arthur Smith. The Honourable Member for James South is heckling me and saying that the community is William Duguid.
And nothing wrong with that.
But in any event, it cannot be that the students at the school of Arthur Smith have to endure the conditions that they now have. And we are going to make sure, through community fundraising activities, that the students at Arthur Smith improve the conditions and the environment that they're asked to go to school in. And I look forward to the day that we can fulfill that promise to the students at that school. And let me go further. That is a school, when it was called the St. Matthias School, that is the school that my father went to. So it gives me great pride as well, not only to help the current students, but also to do it in the name of my father, who is long gone to the great beyond. I could not come as well to this chamber and not speak about the sewage situation that we have endured in Christchurch West. And the people of Christchurch West have really had a tough time with the South Coast Sewage Project. And also the people of Christchurch South. And I want you to understand that every day, day in and day out, the people of Christchurch West had to endure sewage coming up through manholes. Having to walk along the area and getting splashed with sewage, raw sewage in the streets. And I am proud to be part of a government that has made it priority number one to make sure that we rid ourselves of that sewage on the roads of this country. And we need to support, and this is one of the key reasons, apart from all the other things and all the other measures that were intimated throughout the budget, but to get the sewage off the streets of Barbados and to get that South Coast Sewage Project fixed is a priority not only for this country, is a priority for the constituents of Christchurch West. And they have reposed that confidence in the Barbados Labour Party and that confidence in their Member of Parliament to make sure that we can get that situation fixed. And that is why the member for Christchurch East, I will not let him rest. I will call him every day. I will email him every week. I will go by his house and sleep if I have to to make sure that he works constantly and consistently to solve that problem of sewage on the streets of Christchurch West. And I know, I have confidence that the member will do the job. And I know in my heart, that once he sets himself that task, he will get it done. And I thank him for that. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I also would have to make some comments about the budget itself. First, let me say that this budget is a budget of corrective measures. Corrective measures because we were on the wrong path. We were on a path set by us, by the former administration, to take this country into the depths that we had never seen before. You know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that at a time when we told the then administration that we were going to face a major crisis, you remember it well. I got up in this very same Parliament and told the then Prime Minister, who was passed on to the great beyond, that we were going to face a major economic crisis. He said, got up onto his feet and said, what crisis what? We ain't facing a crisis. You're watching too much TV. Everybody laugh. You remember that, Mr. Deputy Speaker? But then, when they really felt the crisis, they weren't laughing anymore. The sad thing is, they did not have the management skills to deal with the crisis. And instead, what they did is to borrow and borrow and borrow, and took us down the garden path to the point that we are now the third most indebted country in the world. And we were never ever there before. And at that time, when we were the government, everything was working. And we didn't owe anybody the amounts of money that we owe them now. Well, I remember the first budget. We were borrowing $1 billion. I was shocked. I had never seen a budget, and you could bear me up on that, Deputy Speaker, that we were borrowing $1 billion to support a budget. Never. And year after year, we were borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. So you know what happens? After you borrow and borrow and borrow, at some point you gotta repay, repay, repay. And the repayment then has taken so much from our economy that we had no money to do anything else. We had no money to fix the South Coast Sewage Project. We had no money to fix the roads. We had no money to fix the schools. We had no money to buy buses. We had no money to do anything because everything was going in repay, repay, repay. So now the Barbados Labour Party has been asked to come and do corrective measures because the people of Barbados have spoken resoundingly that we need to clean house and we need to fix this country and put it back on a secure path. And the people of Barbados know that whenever they ask the Barbados Labour Party to come and fix things, we stand up and get things fixed every single time. We did it in the early 90s. We turned this country around. At that time, job number one was jobs, and we brought 30,000 jobs. Now, job number one is to fix the economy of this country. And we're going to work hard, and we're going to work continuously, and we're going to work continually, and we are going to make sure that we fix the problems and the wrongs that they made in this country and put this country back on a growth path so that we can be proud to go all over this nation and say, I am a member of the Barbados Labour Party, and we are going to fix what we have to fix in this country. And I can go further. And we're going to be proud to go all over this region and say, I have a female Prime Minister and a member for St. Michael Northeast, and let me tell you, she is a great Prime Minister, and she's going to turn Barbados around and put it back to where we ought to be. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to talk a little bit about sharing the burden. So many times, and every time they brought a measure, the previous administration, it was always the people had to bear the burden. Well, many times I didn't even have to come. I knew exactly what the problem, their solution was going to be. Because every single time that they brought a new measure, the people had to bear the burden. Whatever tax it was, the people had to bear the burden. Well, they even carry up bicycle licenses one time then. Dog licenses and cell phone licenses. Every single time, the people had to bear the burden. And I'm talking about the working class people. And this is the first time that we are now saying, no, it cannot continue. Not only must the people bear the burden, but capital must bear the burden. Visitors going to have to take a little bit of the burden. Businesses going to have to take a little bit of the burden. Because as we share the burden amongst everybody, the burden on each and every individual is lessened. It is lessened because other people are joining in. And this is the important part about this budget. Because it does not only encompass the working class, the average person, but it encompasses the businesses. It encompasses capital. It encompasses the visitors. So that we all share the burden. Because we all enjoy this country called Barbados. We all enjoy all the amenities. We all enjoy all the facilities. So therefore, we must all have to shoulder the burden and spread it amongst all of us. Because it's going to be a burden. It cannot be that that previous administration has taken us so far down, and there's not going to be any sort of pain to put us back on a corrective path. And the country recognizes it. And let us not fool ourselves. The people of Barbados are intelligent people. That is why they gave us that resounding victory, because they're intelligent people. And they're intelligent people, and they know that there are certain measures that we're going to have to adopt to put this country back on the right path. But I understand, and I'm going to agree with the opposition, that they want to see, and these are the words of the people I hear, they want to see somebody get locked up. And this is the refrain that we hear wherever we go. Because it cannot be that they are going to have to suffer under corrective measures now, and yet still the other people who put us here in the first place walk around laughing and, as people in Barbados say, skinning the teeth. You know, I know a lot about teeth. So, Mr. Speaker, I must tell you that we are going to be looking to clean up the mess left by the previous administration. We are going to be looking to clean house, because that is the mandate that we have been given. And night and day, we'll be looking to find what the problems were and fix them. And to get on to the matter of problems, Mr. Deputy Speaker, several members in here today have spoken about the problems of their constituents getting a bus. Because it is a national problem now, people not getting access to buses from the Transport Board. The first thing I want to tell you is that a new board has been constituted, and the first order of business we will be looking at is how to fix the problems of buses and scheduling at the Transport Board. But I want to share a little something with you, and I heard you speak about it, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I'm going to expand on it. I paid a surprise visit to the Mangrove Depot on Sunday. Unannounced, nobody expected me, but a birdie had told me go and have a look up there. And when I went to have a look up there, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I saw bus after bus after bus without an engine. Bus after bus after bus without engine. Almost 40 buses, Mr. Deputy Speaker, were there at the Mangrove Depot without engines. And I went around the one in St. Philip, the depot in St. Philip. And I went around with one of the mechanics there, and we counted the buses. And he went through what the problems were with the buses. And the biggest problem with the buses, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is the engines. And what has happened, and I want to give you a little background. What happened is the former board brought in, and this is, you mentioned it, a consultant from Trinidad, paying him a massive salary to only work 2 weeks a month, because he only had to, the contract says he only had to be in Barbados for 14 days. And he didn't go there. It didn't only pay him a massive salary. He brought in 5 other people as well at $4,000 a month too, from Trinidad. And all of them, people who were electronic automotive technician, automotive mechanical technician supervisor, automotive mechanical technician, automotive mechanical technician. Got them work permits. And all of them were brought in to be able to get engines in these buses. Well, they took 40 buses up there to Mangrove. This is taking buses out of the fleet, and this is why people can't get buses now. Took out the engines out the buses. Brought second-hand engines from China. Some of the engines were older than the engines that they took out. You hear me, Mr. Deputy Speaker? Some of the engines were older than the engines that they took out. Put those second-hand engines in and could not get them to work. Some of the engines overheating. I understand, it didn't confirm it to me, but I understand the bus that burnt was one of the engines that they put in. And that was a major problem, to the point that you took a fleet that was supposed to have 200, 180, whatever, down to just 80 working buses. And that is the biggest reason why we can't get buses today. Because they have 40 buses sitting down at Mangrove. They try to get engines in them, brought in second-hand engines and the blocks and so on overheating, and that is why we have a problem today. Well, I am going to undertake that we need to get those buses fixed. I am thankful that the Prime Minister has put in the mini budget that she's allocated, I think she said $5 million to fix in the buses. And I think that alone, we might need a little more than $5 million, but that alone, to get at least 50, 60 buses quickly back on the road by fixing the ones that we do have, will significantly alleviate the problems being experienced by the Transport Board. Yeah, 25 million is for purchase, but 5 million is for repairs, and 20 million is for the new buses. And as my honourable member for St. James North is telling me about the millions for buses, I want to also tell you that we are losing no time whatsoever. We've already looked at what types of buses, and we're working earnestly to get some ideas of which type of buses we will go. If we'll go with an electric bus, this is the new buses we're talking about, or if we're going to go with CNG, which is compressed natural gas buses. I must tell you that in Trinidad, they just bought 100 and something compressed natural gas buses. So it's something that we'll be looking at, but those are decisions yet to be made. But if we can get the current buses we have fixed and back on the road, that can solve our problem much faster than it will take us to get the new buses. Because getting new buses will take a little longer, and getting new buses that are environmentally friendly in terms of electronic or natural gas or whatever it is may take even longer because we have infrastructure to put in place. But I want to go further, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because in addition to that, we have problems with our roads. And the Prime Minister, in her presentation, made it clear that she was, in addition to all the other measures, they were going to give the Ministry of Public Works and Transport $10 million to buying equipment for road repairs and $25 million to actually go to facilitating that road repair. I want to thank her for that. I know she did say that they're of the 600 people that the Transport Board has, that they're 2/3 of them are not being able to work because of not having equipment. But I would want to tweak that a little bit and say that not they're unable to work, but they're not able to work at 100% efficiency. Because they're still able to do some work in the ministry, because if they weren't able to work at all, we would not see any sort of road repairs throughout the country. And we're still seeing some road repairs as best they could. They've been making out with the equipment that they had. And I want to say to all but everyone here and to the country that even although I've only been working at the Ministry of Transport for 2 weeks now, I am very impressed with the workers. And I want to thank them for giving me their full support. And I look forward to working diligently with them to make Barbados and to improve our road infrastructure and to build new roads where necessary, to improve the sidewalks, to improve all aspects of drainage. And I hear you, the Minister, the Member of Parliament for St. Michael South, that we're going to work on those drainage problems and any other drainage problems any member has, so that we will get to the bottom of this, especially at this time now that we're approaching the hurricane season. So we can get prepared and get ready, as drainage problems will become a problem as the rains come in. So all of you, please be encouraged to bring forward the areas that you have drainage problems with, and they'll get it to the relevant people and get working on it. As people who know me, I'm very much a doer. Whenever I'm set a task, I'm hearing you, I'm hearing the opposition, but talk to me a little bit after so I can, rather than during my speech. I am very much a doer, and once set a task, I work at it diligently night and day to get that task achieved. And that is what I intend to do with the ministry, just as much as I do with all other aspects of my life. Another aspect to the ministry, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is the Transport Authority. And I want to talk a little bit about that. The former minister ran down there by the river terminal and opened the new terminal that is run by the Transport Authority to put his name on it, honourable members are saying. But yet still, not one bus, not one ZR has been able to be received in the new terminal. Not one passenger has been able to be accommodated in the new terminal. Because there are certain things that we have to do to get the new terminal operational. But I want to assure the public that as soon as humanly possible, and by the way, I have also already put in place the new Transport Authority Board as well. So I want to assure the public that as soon as I can get that board to meet as well, we will be working very swiftly to get access for the buses, the minibuses, and the public, so that they can access that new terminal. And the new terminal is important because it gives passengers and riders an opportunity to be under shade and shelter, and also better bathroom facilities, better facilities in general, better organization of how you're picked up and dropped off and so on. So I look forward to getting that Transport Authority Board, well, it's in place, but I look forward to getting that terminal operational as a matter of urgency for the people of Barbados.
5 more minutes.
Already?
Yes.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I think you took some of my time somewhere along the line. Anyway, I thank you for that. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we as a party have a lot of work to do. And as a party, I am proud to say that I am 100% confident that this team is the right team at the right time. And by the team, I don't only mean the front bench, the ministers. I also mean the back bench. I also mean the civil service. I also mean the leader of the opposition. Because I think if we all work together, if we all work to improve this country, if we all work to take this country forward every single day, even if by just 1 inch, we would have done what the people want us to do, which is to improve this country and by extension to improve their lot that they have been dealt. And I want to end with this final thought. In 2013, when I made it clear that I would not be seeking re-election, the then member for St. Michael's South stood in his place in the position of Prime Minister and said quite clearly that my voice would be forever silenced in this honourable chamber, and that I would ride off into the sunset and nobody would hear from me again. Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the current member for St. Michael's South has silenced his voice forever, and his voice will never be heard again in this honourable chamber. And he will now be the person riding off into the sunset. And if nothing else, he will be hearing my voice from this chamber for many more years to come. I thank you.
Thank you. Member for St. James Central.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is with a degree of pleasure that I take this opportunity to make a small contribution to this debate. Let me begin, Mr. Speaker, by thanking the Almighty for blessing me with the opportunity to return to these precincts. I also want, Mr. Speaker, sir, to say a word of thanks to the good people of St. James Central. And that is not just at a rhetorical level, Mr. Speaker, sir, but at a very heartfelt level, because I benefited from the privilege of being the first person to hold the seat, entitled the seat for St. James Central in this House of Assembly after it was established in 2003. Yeah. And between then and the 24th of May, Mr. Speaker, sir, the constituency was always a marginal one, with a majority that never exceeded 275 odd votes. Today, Mr. Speaker, sir, that majority is now one of 3,000 votes. Oh. And one has to thank the people of St. James Central for the very emphatic statement that they have made in the last general election. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, I also want to lend my voice of thanks to the members of the Social Partnership of Barbados. Because, as you have heard in this debate, sir, for roughly 40 hours, certainly at least 5 meetings, the Social Partnership would have met under the chairmanship of the Prime Minister. Many of my colleague ministers would have been party to at least a part of that series of meetings. And Mr. Speaker, sir, there was a tremendous sense of nationalism, public spiritedness displayed in those historic engagements, which led, of course, to the very important and necessary intervention of Monday morning, and that which is now attracting our attention by way of a debate. Now, turning to the debate, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Deputy Speaker.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sorry. And perhaps, sir, I should also congratulate you, because in spite of your long years of service, sir, I know that this is the very first time that you have occupied the chair, and I hope you enjoy your tenure. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this morning, I listened with interest to the Leader of the Opposition, and he raised a few matters about which I'm not going to be too severe, but I think, sir, that you cannot allow them to pass in silence, because the public must be constantly made aware of the clarity of purpose of this government. That the Leader of the Opposition is novitiate to the office and to the Finance Ministry is not his fault, and that he finds himself entangled in tall grass is something that we must forgive him about. But Mr. Speaker, sir, he raised the question of entitlement and asked whether this government intended to continue the age-old practice of entitlement in the public service of Barbados. And by that, simply we are talking about creating a culture or maintaining a culture in Barbados, which we have had since the days of independence, where people have been led to believe that they can rely on the government for whatever service without necessarily having to pay or share fairly and evenly in the process of the delivery of that service. Mr. Speaker, sir, I considered it to be unfortunate because of the fact that the Prime Minister has made it abundantly clear by virtue of the creation of a mechanism now for the payment at household level of $1.50 and at commercial level, to which I will speak a little later on in this speech, for the sanitation services to be collected and for the maintenance of our sewage system. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have broken ranks with this culture of entitlement. And in fact, the dawn of a new age has come where the people of Barbados, ever so gently, are being ushered into a new environment where at every level of the community, whether you are corporate, whether you are an individual householder, and at whatever level of household you're in, you're being asked to play a part in the discharge of the burden of keeping this country clean and maintaining the sewage system in Barbados. It is a system, sir, and this is perhaps the difficulty we've had. We look at it on the South Coast, and we say because we live in Redmond Village in St. Thomas, or we live in Six Men's in St. Peter, that has nothing to do with me. And that is not true. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that Barbados is too small a place for us to say it in that disconnected and siloed way. And to the extent that there is a need to maintain the sewage system in Christchurch, to maintain the one that we made to understand has come perilously close to catastrophic failure in Bridgetown, and indeed, Mr. Speaker, sir, to the extent that we need to develop one on the west coast of Barbados, then this entire country has to be asked to share in the burden. And I will speak a little bit more to that issue a little later. The Leader of the Opposition, sir, also spoke to the question of the shape of statutory entities and questioned their population by political operatives. And again, Mr. Speaker, I understand the political jab, but the time for that has passed. And I want this country to understand that. My ministry has been asked to be the ministry that leads the process of transformation of statutory corporations in Barbados. The Barbados Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. and the Tourism Product Authority are the two that have been placed on the front line for a public-private sector partnership. Mr. Speaker, sir, it goes without saying, therefore, that the process of transformation of the statutory entities has begun. I spent this morning, Mr. Speaker, because I feel it is a duty of a minister coming to office only 2 weeks ago, to interface with the people at both of those entities who would have heard for the very first time yesterday, as the rest of the country heard for the first time, that this is a matter that has now come to fruition. It is true that the manifesto of the Barbados Labour Party, and I suspect that the Leader of the Opposition, had he been scripted more even-handedly or perhaps by himself, would have been made aware that the manifesto of the Barbados Labour Party spoke to the public-private sector partnership with respect to the BTMI. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, that's not the point. The point is that human beings' jobs are at stake here. Families of Barbados have a concern, and therefore their minister was there this morning to meet with them and to placate those concerns and to try to identify a vision of the way forward. Again, it is a matter to which I intend to speak to this House at some length this evening. But the point is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the shape of statutory entities in Barbados is going to have to change, and I think the Prime Minister made it very clear, there's a phase 2. And during phase 2, and indeed as part of phase 3, we're going to have to deal with some of that heavy lifting. We cannot deal with it all now, and frankly, sir, I don't think the population or the statutory entities themselves are ready to deal with it. So we have to prepare them for that long march. But the time will come, sir, because of the negligence of the Democratic Labour Party, whose Minister of Finance stood in this place on the 13th of December, Friday the 13th of December 2013, and pledged to deal with the statutory corporations of Barbados, either by way of amalgamation, or as he put it, by way of privatization, or any other way of dealing with them. And between the 13th of December 2013 and today did nothing, Mr. Speaker, sir. We have found a situation where that situation at the statutory entities has gotten worse. And we have to deal in an even-handed and a fair manner with the state-owned enterprises, because at all times, and I want to make it clear, this government is not going to take the approach taken by the Democratic Labour Party when they took a blunt instrument to the NCC and several others and just arbitrarily sent home 2,500 people in December of 2013. Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, there are obviously some factors which triggered the intervention that we are talking about today. The decline of the foreign reserves to $220-odd million, the doubling of our inflation rate, the debt to GDP level that is 175% of GDP, which is the third highest to be found anywhere on planet Earth, Mr. Speaker, sir. And of course, the debt. And the leader of the opposition asked whether we have a mandate. And it is at this point, sir, that I must seriously part company with the honourable member, because he shared our platform. He shared our platform. He spoke shoulder to shoulder with all of us on this side, Mr. Speaker, sir. And he knows that we addressed this country on the issue of the debt every night for a 4-week campaign, and even before the 4-week campaign was officially announced. It is an unfortunate act of, to use his word, unwisdom, now to come and to insinuate that this government was in any way deficient or derelict in duty, because every one of the members in here, sir, would have addressed their constituents on the issue of the need to deal with the debt in Barbados and the debilitating state of the national debt. And, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Point of order.
I hate to interrupt the
point of order.
The honourable member is leading the House.
Leading?
The House.
Okay.
And I hate to interrupt him while he is waxing so eloquently. But I simply put the view, if you would recall, Mr. Speaker, that we reasonably and quite understandably excited the expectations of the electorate with realistic offerings. I simply then posited the view that perhaps we need to stop to consider whether or not we had sufficiently signaled that these harsh measures were upon us.
No point of order, Fung. That's his interpretation, so.
I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker, so I really don't want to belabor the point, because as I said, I want to bring clarity of purpose to what we are about. And the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that there was no doubt, certainly in my mind, and I don't think there's any doubt in the minds of any members on this side, that we made it clear to the country, and indeed the Central Bank report of Barbados, which is independent of us, made it clear to the country that there was a $1.8 billion issue of debt that had to be dealt with, and that it was a matter of first priority for the government of Barbados if we were to form the government. And Mr. Speaker, sir, we have formed the government, and we have begun the process of dealing with that. As the Prime Minister has made clear, the Honourable Prime Minister has made clear, sir, we are talking about $800 million a year in interest payments. That is larger than the wage bill of the public service. $800 million a year, Mr. Speaker, sir. And you can't just simply allow it to continue to mushroom. And that is the point that I want to make. Now, where I do agree with the Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Member, is when he speaks to the need for us to speak the language of growth. And when I sat on that side, Mr. Speaker, there was many a time when we were in budgetary debates and financial debates, when I engaged the Honourable Minister of Finance, as he then was, the Honourable Member with responsibility for international business and others. on the question of growth, because I've always felt that that was the missing part of this puzzle, and that the Democratic Labour Party did not have a serious growth agenda or growth platform to offer to the people of Barbados. The time has now come, Mr. Speaker, sir, where the Leader of the Opposition has made the point that the devil we need to speak to, and I'm quoting him, is the underperformance of the tourism spend in Barbados. And he does that, he says that quite rightly under the agenda for growth. And I agree. It is all too easy to point to the increase of arrivals, but the fact of the matter is that tourism spend has been down in Barbados. What do we do about that? We have to identify, Mr. Speaker, sir, immediate revenue streams and to deliver upon them. I want this House to understand that since the year 2000, there has been a mushrooming of additional accommodation, non-traditional additional accommodation. We not seeing it in the hotel sector, but you're seeing it in privately owned entities, which may be houses that put up a room, the villa market, multi-tiered accommodation, condominiums, etc. And what has evolved there is what has been called in the sector a peer-to-peer network. Owners attract guests, some of them go through property managers, and there's a significant increase in the room inventory that constitutes the rooms that are available for rent in Barbados for tourism purposes. Out of that has emerged, Mr. Speaker, a number of platforms which are called the sharing economy. Airbnb, many members would have heard about. There are several others, HomeAway, Flipkey, Expedia, VRBO, it goes on and on. Almost every week another one pops up. And Barbadians, being very attuned to what's happening commercially around the world, will adjust. In fact, quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, sir, this government, when it was last in office, started to trigger this process at the lead up to Cricket World Cup, when we invited people and incentivized them as well to bill on an apartment, put a room up for rent, because people would be coming here for Cricket World Cup. And in my constituency, I know a good few people who did that. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is that these entities that constitute the so-called sharing economy, the Airbnbs and HomeAways, etc., they do not own any lodging. They're not owning the lodging. They come here and they do business here, and they act essentially as brokers, so that they are receiving a percentage of the service fee, and they are the intermediary which allows the guest in Europe or the guest in the United States to come here to a host accommodation, whether it be a room, a villa, a house, whatever. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the whole concept is about attracting more consumption and sharing the accommodation based on that. The difficulty that this country has, Mr. Speaker, is that there may be as many, well, we have identified up to this stage as many as 3,000 such entities. Many of those entities are not registered. So these are private people, Mr. Speaker, who've done their adjustments to their house or built a property, and it is used specifically for that purpose. They're not registered with the government of Barbados. They are doing their own private thing. I hear the Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Member, when he makes the point that you don't want to stifle entrepreneurial spirit. And none of us want to do that. But you can't talk about stifling something that has been in existence since the year 2005, 6, or 7, and we're now in 2018. That is not new. That has been around now for 10 years. And there are, as I said, a low estimate is 3,000. More realistically, we believe it might be as much as 5,000 or 6,000 such rooms being sold online via e-platforms that do not attract any revenue. What we also have found out, Mr. Speaker, is that by doing an assessment, you can conclude that there are about $336 US a night average room rates in that sector. $336 US a night room rate. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, that is comparable to some of the 5 stars on the west coast of Barbados. And effectively, therefore, we have a substantive amount of business taking place which is not registered, and therefore, first issue, the jurisdiction that we call Barbados has a reputation to protect, and an experience that a visitor has, even though the market can correct it because you can go on the internet and say your experience was bad. But if you have too many such experiences, then the jurisdiction takes a reputational hit. So therefore, the government needs to know, by way of you registering and we being able to do a quality control audit, what is happening in that sector. That's the first point. But the financial point is this. We cannot allow entities of that nature, sir, to effectively dig a subterranean tunnel under the revenue of Barbados en route to finding the bank that they do business with. And that is now what is happening. You are bypassing the revenue of Barbados underground in order to get to the bank so that you can bank your 336 US per night average rate. The solution to that, Mr. Speaker, sir, to use the language of the Leader of the Opposition, when we talk about identifying revenue streams, is to have a zero-tolerance approach to this type of business if it is not registered and paying its fair share. And so therefore, sir, our first challenge is to find such businesses. You have to locate them, and you must also be able to locate all transactions being done in that interface. The second thing, Mr. Speaker, sir, is to create another interface with merchants and banks in order to collect money for the government of Barbados. And that is where it becomes necessary to have an intervention by way of electronic technology so that an entity can identify where transactions arise in Barbados, who is engaging in the transaction, with whom they're doing it across borders in whichever part of the world, be able, on the basis of a legal infrastructure that we will come to this Parliament and put in place, so that there will be a lawful authority for this entity that will be created to work in the name of the revenue of Barbados, the BRA, so that you can collect the taxes that need to be collected, and where there is non-compliance, shut down the operator who is not doing what he must do in accordance with the law of Barbados. In that way, Mr. Speaker, sir, we plug the gap in the revenue stream. Sorry, not plug, we create the revenue stream and avoid and make sure that people cannot avoid it. Above and beyond that, Mr. Speaker, sir, there's also the question of the need for us to collect data, because the more we get to know about this, the more we will be better positioned to do justice to the country by way of protecting both its reputation as a jurisdiction and also protect and maintaining some knowledge about how the industry is evolving. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, collection and remittance of taxes in the sharing economy sector is one first priority of this government. The ministry has conservatively, at this stage, estimated that once we can get this in place by October, we should be in a position in the first fiscal year to get $8 to $10 million into the coffers of Barbados. We believe, however, that at the calculation of 3,000 such rooms. We believe, as I said, Mr. Speaker, sir, that it might be as much as twice that amount. What baffles me, Mr. Speaker, is that this is not rocket science and this is not new. Airbnb has been around now for a long time, and similar players have been around for a long time. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, sir, the last regime must be held accountable for dereliction of duty in terms of their failure to put the mechanism I am now speaking about in place in the interest of the people of Barbados. If we can get at 6,000 rooms, suppose we are right, 8 by 2 is $16 million. Then the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, let us understand the relevance of $16 million to Barbados. We stopped sending our children to university because we can find $20 million to do it every year. But we allow people to have a $16 million boom without plugging the hole. And Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a shame to have to say to this country that on the 28th day of February 2017, the Honourable Minister of Tourism, as he then was written by the Public Policy Director for Central America and the Caribbean for Airbnb. And he requested that there be a meeting which would have the opportunity to present an economic study to the minister, discuss ways in which Airbnb could partner with the government, address any issues or concerns regarding the sharing economy, and pointed out to the minister that they had recently signed agreements for the payment, collection and payment of money with Aruba, Jamaica, Curacao. And they then, Mr. Speaker, sir, sent a memorandum of understanding between the government of Barbados and Airbnb in draft. And the memorandum of understanding, Mr. Speaker, sir, at the second page, speaks to areas of cooperation which include but are not limited to the collection and remittance of taxes and any areas of mutual interest. That was over a year ago, Mr. Speaker, sir. And the ministry's file reflects that these things were received. I've just read from them, and I'm prepared to amend a document in the House, Mr. Deputy Speaker, but not acted upon. And I want to give the assurance to you, to this House through you, sir, that those days of dithering and indifference in the context of financial difficulty in this country have come to an end. Mr. Speaker, sir, what they found time to do, however, was to get the Hilton, try to get the Hilton sold behind the backs of the people of Barbados. And I want to use this place, sir, to apologize to the country, because I was among those who led the charge on the basis of the fact that the Hilton was to be sold for 80 million United States dollars. The facts of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the file reflects that that was jacked up after noise was kept by the opposition as we were at the time. But that the initial, the price at which there were initial contemplation of sale was $73 million, Mr. Speaker, sir, United States currency, for a property that was valued at $90 million. And again, Mr. Speaker, sir, in whose interest, that is the question, in whose interest did those gentlemen who occupied this place before serve the people of Barbados? Now, Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition has also raised the important question of BTMI and the Tourism Product Authority and the public-private partnership. And he makes the correct point that the issue really on the surface appears to be that taxpayers will still pay the bill because we are collecting $75 million through an increase in departure tax and placing it at the disposal of the new entity. At first blush, that is perfectly correct. But the new entity, and this is why I have said to the members of staff, do not be crestfallen. See this as a boon. It is an oasis of opportunity. For those who do not know, an oasis is the fertile place in the desert where you get water and life when there was only arid heat before, Mr. Speaker, sir. The truth of the matter is that on the 31st day of March every year, people in the tourism marketing tourism, BTMI and BTPA, the product authority, would have been waiting to get $96 million because that is what is written down in the estimates as the budget. But it never comes and never came. So that by the 1st of April, you were confronted, especially under the last government, with a contribution as low as $65 million one year, 70-odd million another. And Mr. Speaker, sir, what we are saying is that we segregate $75 million to start with, but then you go into partnership on the basis of the fact that you have one of the most well-known tourism products in the world in Barbados. You have a tourism product that is not only well-known, but enjoys the most repeat visitors outside of New York and Orlando in this hemisphere, here Barbados, Mr. Speaker, sir. And what we have to do is to understand that just as happened with Florida, Florida in 1996 went into a Florida Tourism Marketing Incorporated. We have a Barbados Tourism Marketing Incorporated. A public-private partnership emerged out of that called Visit Florida. And Visit Florida is a non-profit public-private entity that is intended to do the same thing that we are now seeking to do for Barbados. Marry the private sector, which is mature, seasoned, knowledgeable, and has financial reach, with the state funds in a partnership. So if we raise $75 million here, we are going to turn to the private sector and say, my ambition as minister is to come to dollar for dollar parity. I know it isn't going to happen immediately. I know they're going to have to pull some people dragging and kicking because they have traditionally not seen life from that side. I know that there are many people who feel that Destination Barbados should be something they benefit from without putting any money in the pot. But guess what, Mr. Speaker, sir? Destination Barbados is something they benefit from, and their prestigious hotel or restaurant or attraction could not be what it is if it was not located in Destination Barbados. So we bring the private sector players to the table as well. And we ask them to come together as investment partners in what the Americans call a pay-to-play arrangement. And you're talking about cooperative promotional programs, cooperative advertising campaigns, strategic alliances with some of the iconic attractions in Barbados. And there are plenty. We're about to open the world's first departure beach, for example, which will be there by Copacabana. We are going to open, Mr. Speaker, sir, or have already opened a high-end attraction called Nikki Beach. I ain't advertising anybody's property, but Mr. Speaker, if you go, for example, to Port Ferdinand and Port St. Charles, these are all value for money propositions, and we can help them and they can help us. And the intention, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the first time in the history of this country is to go to the private sector who are directly involved and those like Duty Free Caribbean who are not directly involved but who make a lot of their living off of the spin-off that we create called the tourism product. And we say to them that this is an opportunity to do the partnership in terms of marketing, because if together we can get that 75 million to come to 100 and 125, the sky is the limit for what the possibilities are for Barbados, and everybody involved stands to benefit. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition also spoke to the need to reimagine the Barbados brand, and I am entirely on board with that. I was pleased to hear, knowing the colour that he wears, that his first suggestion was one of casinos. And it tells me that the breakthrough might be a lot easier and faster in coming than I had anticipated.
A point of order.
One of the first...
In the House, I never suggested that we go the way of casinos. I simply observed that our development was constrained when compared to other destinations because, for instance, we don't have casinos and such. Like, I never suggested that.
Point of explanation. Continue.
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, I am guided. The Honourable Member mentioned casinos. But whether he mentioned or suggested is not so much the point. The important thing is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the ice has been broken on an issue that this country has to confront. The Barbados Labour Party's manifesto is well known to the Honourable Member, and he knows that wedge issues, for example, casino gambling, for example, mercy killing or so-called euthanasia, for example, decriminalization of marijuana, will go to referendum in this country because we believe philosophically that these 30 people in here should not make or break the country on an issue like that, but involve everybody in an opportunity to have their say. As far as this minister is concerned, Mr. Speaker, sir, my ministry will do the necessary research so that a policy paper can be created, an even-handed paper looking at the negatives and looking at the positives, looking at the potential financial gains and the potential fallout negatively wherever that may exist.
I have 5 minutes.
What I also say to you, Mr. Speaker, sir, however, is this. I am aware that the last government, the Democratic Labour Party, changed the law so as to allow cruise lines to come into our port, spend a night, gamble on board, make for their owners a lot of money by way of profit, and cruise off to the next destination, leaving nothing here. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, sir, that if it can work for somebody whose entity is located somewhere in Latin America or Germany, then, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have to face the reality. Let us not only locate the burden on the backs of the ordinary Barbadian, but we can find a way of protecting the Barbadian society while at the same time doing those things that keep us competitive and also help some revenue to come into the country. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the 5 minutes left to me, I want to speak also to the issue on the West Coast, which is one of the arising out of the immediate apparent level of the cost of garbage and sewage levy. Because commercial entities are going to pay 50% of their water bill, and 1/2 of that is going to go to the Sanitation Service Authority, and 1/2 used to offset the sewage system cost. Now, sir, I want to say to the players on the West Coast, your turn is coming very soon, because we have to sewer the West Coast of Barbados as well. The reality is that the reef out there is in an advanced stage of decay and decline. If we lose the reef, then we lose the West Coast, and as the Honourable Member for Christchurch East has already said to this House, the wave action and the erosion on the beach is already manifesting itself. The country cannot afford to lose the beaches on the West Coast, because right now that is really what is paying our bills, but I don't start with the tourism product. I start with the people. And the people of Barbados need to have that recreation for themselves as well. So we must think in terms of how best we can protect it in an even-handed way. If after a period of a few months, there is a clear indication that it is causing undue hardship, then we will find a mechanism. I give the assurance to this House as a Member of Parliament for the area and as Minister that we will try our best to identify a solution to ease that burden. But I want everybody out there to understand that we cannot go chopping and changing immediately. Let us get the benefit of a new government, and all we ask for is a little bit of time to see how the policy works before we try to make interventions without the benefit of data collection, because collection of data helps us to make sensible decisions which we can then communicate to the people in an effort to solve the problem. That is the only request I make. Mr. Speaker, sir, the final point on data collection. The European Union on the 25th day of May has passed a piece of legislation which is intended to make sure that everyone who collects data on European citizens protects that data and notifies clients of breaches of the data, and the collectors must guarantee safe handling of the data as it moves across borders. And the penalty, if you fail to do this, can run as high as 24 million United States dollars. For those in tourism, Mr. Speaker, sir, a lot of collection of data is done. Bookings and reservations and so on. And Mr. Speaker, the reality is that it carries significant consequences for the Caribbean hotel sector and our agents, especially, as I said, with respect to market data collection. The tourism industry has multiple points at which it collects data. Payment processes, rewards plans, guest services, there's a whole range of them. This country must now become very quickly attuned to that reality, because it isn't only tourism, there are other players out there as well. And I want to serve a notice from this place to the people of Barbados, and quite frankly to the rest of the Caribbean, that the compliance with the new EU regulations is something that we must pay very careful attention to, because this now threatens to be yet another wolf knocking at our door in circumstances where the consequences for failure to comply are exceptionally horrific. And on the other end of the coin, on the other side of the coin, Mr. Speaker, sir, the capacity that we have to put the necessary protection in place is also still very limited. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to thank you with those few words for your indulgence, and I will remain committed to the cause of advancing the policies of this government. I'm obliged.
With that, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the sitting be suspended until 8 o'clock this evening.
The question is that the sitting be suspended until 8 o'clock this afternoon. Is it tonight?
Yes.
Those in favor say aye. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Meeting the ayes have it. This House is now suspended until 8 o'clock this afternoon.